And we are back. Nutrition Coaching Secrets podcast with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Tommy Clark. What's up, brother? How are you today?
That's better. After the roast I was getting in the very first time I hopped on here, I appreciate the compliments.
And you had to earn your stripes here on the podcast.
I think
Obviously,
I earned them when you left me here for like 5 minutes to fend for myself.
yeah, man. Last week we made you start on your own, but Kerry Campbell was in there keeping you company. Um, but anybody that doesn't know, Tommy is the super producer. He is the man behind really everything you guys see that's coming out a lot on the NCI side. He's been great. He's been next to me in terms of creating and getting some of these, like intentions that we had declared quite some time ago, really bringing them to fruition and getting them out. So super appreciative for you, man. I think we've got a good topic for everybody today. I know we teased the topic yesterday and it seemed to get a lot of really good response right away. So what are we talking about today?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. We're diving into whether or not your client should be tracking macros. And like Jay said, this topic got a lot of traction yesterday. I was surprised, to be honest. We posted it in the group, and within like 10 minutes, I think there was 22 likes on the post, which is a high amount relative to what we're normally at. So I'm excited to dive into it. And I know as a coach personally, this is a question that comes up for me a lot. And it's a difficult one because sometimes you hear people say, oh, they need to be tracking macros, but they might not be ready for it. So I think this episode is going to help a lot of people.
For sure. It's funny. We were messaging back and forth yesterday, and you said, what do you want to talk about on the podcast yesterday? And I did a live training last night. Shout out to my boys, John Prano and Billy Felice over Training for Warriors in New York. They own and operate True Nutrition, and so great guys. And they had asked me to come into their group. They're running a challenge with their gym and really talk about education, really talk about compliance. And obviously the one big piece of resistance they had just had in their gym was people not wanting to track, people not wanting to go through this laborious process or quote unquote laborious process of learning to track. And so I thought it was a really good idea that we talk about this because I think, we know there's another company out there that touts the what is habit-based bullshit or I don't know. There's lots of different methods out there. There's templated things like and so obviously I think that the most like readily accepted method by coaches in the space today is macros. I think that if you were to ask an athlete, if you were to ask somebody that is very intent on their goals, how they're going about achieving them, I think that they are going to talk about macros. But not everybody fits into that category, and I think that a lot of us coaches need to stop coming at it solely from that perspective. I think that we're so conditioned that in our own lives, of course, we would use macros in optimization, in optimal results. We would use macros, but remember, like, not every person is coming from the same background. And if you would have told me when I was overcoming anorexia that like macros were the key, I'm not sure I would have been super open to it. And so I think that we have to remember it's where somebody is in the journey, what that journey should be leading to, and really understanding what the big picture is as to whether or not we're implementing quote unquote macros as the protocol or the methodology. So in the level 1 certification, which, guys, by the way, this weekend, if you're listening to this as we're recording on Friday, October 23rd, this weekend, Saturday the 24th, Sunday the 25th, we are having our last live level 1 of the year. Because it's the last one of the year, we are also offering 50% off. So if you're seeing this today, if you want to take action, if you want to get in on Zoom, definitely come check it out this weekend. The Zoom experience is amazing. We've done it 4 times this year. The reviews have been nothing short of amazing, and people have really gone on to be very successful coaches. So, but as we talk about in there, I liken nutritional protocols to like an Everest analogy, right? When you go climb Everest, the whole journey is mad, right? Just getting there, having your Sherpa, like getting to the first checkpoint, like it's got to be magical. I can only imagine like sitting at the base of it, like looking up at the summit and being like, holy shit, I'm going to be there. And so the whole journey matters, right? Every step you take matters, but very clearly what you do as you approach the pinnacle probably has more importance. And so I think that physical transformations, whether it's fat loss, whether it's performance, whether it's longevity, like whatever you're looking for, as you approach the pinnacle, all of the details become more important. And so if we were to look at dieting as a whole, somebody that's just coming in and somebody that's maybe been doing it for a long time, as they get closer and closer to their goals, the number of mistakes or needs to be minimized, but really the attention to detail needs to be maximized. And this is where I think macros come in. And so it's not open for discussion. It is indisputable that the pinnacle of success in the dietary world, if you're trying to achieve peak level performance, peak aesthetics, you need to understand how much food you're taking in. You need to understand the quantity of the macros that you're taking in, and there needs to be a heavy emphasis on the quality of that food, or at least understanding why there is emphasis on quality or lack thereof, right? And when I always tell the story, when I went to the CrossFit Games with Travis Mayer, I made sure he ate a burger and fries every night. Everyone's like, well, that's not the pinnacle of anything. No, it actually is the pinnacle of everything. It's getting him to understand that our attention is not on micronutrients right now. Our attention is on making sure that you have adequate calories to recover from the crazy demands of 4 workouts in a day and to fuel 5 more workouts tomorrow at an intensity level that is literally emptying the tank every single time. And a lot of people don't understand that, but totally fine. That's the pinnacle. And then that extends then into a postseason, which, we've talked about here on the podcast, that extends into a postseason where there is a heavy emphasis on micronutrients, right? I'm making sure there's adequate amounts and that there is a heavy emphasis on those micros so that we facilitate recovery internally, physiologically, so that we set up the next offseason and make, adaptations that will make him a better athlete in the future. So, when we look at the dieting process in general, anybody that is near the peak of their goals, yes, I believe macros are going to be the tool. I can't see a physique competitor getting ready. I can't see somebody, finishing off their transformation, really achieving the peak level of success without using a tool like that. Getting to that point does not require macros. Beyond that point, I don't think there should be an emphasis on macros. So my whole take on this is you really have to know, where is your client in the journey? Where on the Everest scale is your client coming in? Are they brand new to dieting? Like, they've tried keto, they've tried fasting, they've tried vegan. Are they brand new to the notion that like dieting is far less about restriction and it's more about the overall protocol? If that's the case, you don't need to start them on macros. Is this somebody that has been counting macros and they're severely over dieted because they're in massive restriction? Okay, well then maybe you do start them with macros because they're already comfortable. Is this somebody that has been counting macros for a significant amount of time, repeatedly shown success with macros, but is struggling to find balance in their life? Well, I would say start with macros again, but start to plan the transition. So you really have to understand what is the situation that you're dealing with. And this is where the based model comes into play. You have to be willing to connect with your client. So there's a couple questions that I think you need to ask. Number one is, what is the overall goal? What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to achieve something extreme? Because when we look at subsets of goals, performance, aesthetics, and longevity, there's clearly a continuum in each one. Tommy, you and I, we're not trying to be pro athletes today, right? Like, at one point you were playing ball in college, like you were trying to make it at a very high level. And despite you getting the worst advice ever in college, which was to go paleo during basketball, had you gotten good advice in college, it probably would have been some derivative of macros and making sure you had adequate.
Yeah, no, I mean, after that experience, the off season, after I finally figured out, oh shit, carbs are kind of important, I actually did track macros and I gained back the 21 pounds I lost, and I gained 8 more pounds of pretty quality weight. And that's probably the best shape I've ever been in. So that macros got me there.
Yeah. So you were tracking towards, though, what we would call really like the pinnacle or the absolute of that, right? So if we look at the triangle of awareness, you were really navigating towards that, like that corner, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Or that point of the triangle. Point is probably better stated. It's not really a corner.
Yeah.
But you were tracking towards that top point of performance. So your aesthetics, like your vanity metrics, kind of went out the window. I don't want to say that like you didn't want to feel good, because of course you wanted to feel good. You needed to be able to perform. But at the end of the day, even if you felt like shit, you could still perform at a very high level. So that's what we were fueling. Now, contrast that with today. I would have to guess you still enjoy basketball. I would still guess that you want to be able to go to a court and not have anybody question that you did play college ball. So to some degree, nutritional principles do matter, because you want to make sure that, hey, I don't feel like shit. Hey, I'm not a fat slob. Like you're living your life in a manner that allows you to A, be functional every day, but B, still be that baller that lives deep inside of you, right?
Yeah. I mean, right now, I would say my goal, if I had to put it on the triangle, would be closer to aesthetics, not so far in the corner that I'm spending like every day in the gym doing bodybuilding stuff and tracking super closely. Because honestly, I'm not really tracking super close. I'll track maybe a couple days out of the week just to make sure I'm kind of in a decent spot and not under, because I tend to undereat. I tend to just forget to eat because I'm working on stuff, and it's just not a good look. So I'll track just to make sure I'm kind of in a decent spot, but I'm not super dialed in with it right now. I think I'm going to transition into more of an aesthetic goal. But yeah, it's definitely not as rigid, or I don't want to say as rigid because that has a negative connotation, but as structured as it was when I was really pushing towards that performance pinnacle.
Well, I think you actually struggling to find that word brings up the whole issue with macros in general. And I
Yeah, I
think
want to be
really
very careful with that because that's a really common like
yeah, and
misconception people to dive into.
I think that's actually the whole fundamental reason we're having this conversation. And like I said, as you navigate towards any of the absolute targets, as you navigate towards absolute performance, great example, today, like I said, it's Friday, October 23rd. The CrossFit Games are starting today. Those athletes absolutely should know what's coming in, or whoever's feeding them, right? I would not put it incumbent upon the athlete, but I hope they have a nutrition coach that is there, that has they understand what the output is. They understand what the perceived effect on the HPA axis is, the nervous system, and that they're offsetting that with, understanding calories and macros that are going in. Like, I know for me, every time I'm at an event with an athlete, man, I know down to the gram what's going in. We do that with Luke when we're rehydrating him. I mean, any athlete that's ever worked with me will tell you, like, I am a meticulous motherfucker when it comes to those really key times. As you get closer to the absolute target, to use the Everest analogy again, as you get closer to the summit, as you get closer to peaking, you have to have a very definitive understanding of exactly what's going in, exactly what's coming out, and really what the net effect of those two things are. And so, like you said, as you begin to undertake more of an aesthetic goal, you will go back to tracking. You will go back to having more structure. But by the way, that confusion of structure and rigidity, it's not that. It's a very fine line, man, because
Yeah.
structure by nature is rigid. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay, because there are times where I believe every human being, you got to remember, when you're setting out to achieve a set of goals, you're not achieving normalcy. And so you're navigating away from what quote unquote normal in your life either is or has been. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't be an emotional experience. But as you're navigating away from normalcy, you're also navigating closer and closer to the pinnacle of your goals. Well, I don't firmly believe that any set of goals is meant to be maintained forever, right? And this goes into a much deeper conversation of quote unquote sustainability. Well, even that word in and of itself has become so bastardized, because as a nutrition coach, I don't teach you how to sustain the pinnacle of the results that we create together. I teach you how to sustain a periodized model that allows you to put your foot on the gas, create results whenever you desire them, but be in a position that day-to-day life is so comfortable and puts you in a physiological state that you have the ability to create results whenever you desire. That is real sustainability. That's real coaching, right? And that's kind of what you've created on your own with the education you've received. I don't need to track right now. I know my shortcoming is that I undereat. And by the way, you and I are the exact same on that, right? And so inevitably, like shout out to my boy Johnny Irizarry. When I started 75 Hard, I reached out to him. He was, handling all my nutrition. By the way, like I have pictures. John's a wizard, man. Like in the first 2 weeks, dude, I was exponentially leaner. I had dropped 5 pounds and I was eating 400 grams of carbs a day. And like for a lot of people know, like I work right here, like at this table and, from bed and like I work very sedentary throughout the day. Now I do get up, I do track my steps, obviously with 75 Hard, you're training twice a day, but I was very careful as well. But, my nature is to undereat. However, just like you, there will be periods where I'll track and be like, all right, biofeedback's a little bit off. Let me track. Oh shit, I'm really under eating. Let me add some calories to this. And then when we attack that physical pursuit, dude, when we started 75 Hard, boom, I was on macros every day. So the simple truth is if your clients are trying to get to the pinnacle of their results, right? To the pinnacle. We're not talking about getting momentum moving forward. We're not talking about exiting into an off season. We're talking about navigation towards the summit. Every step at that moment becomes exponentially more critical. And I am going to argue, yes, macros are going to be your best route. Now, I don't care whether it's, macros in the II setting. I don't care if it's macro-based keto plan. I think carnivore should just never fucking exist. So, again, whatever your dietary protocol of choice is, that's fine. But there is it can't be disputed that quantity with a heavy emphasis on quality is the single best route to doing this. Somebody asked me last night, what about intuitive eating? And I was like, well, let's talk about that. Because the truth is, where you are today, your intuition has brought you to. Now, I don't mean if you're overweight or underweight that your intuition has created that. In fact, it goes far beyond that. Where you are today, in the things that you've tried and the results you have or have not gotten, is what your intuition has led you to. More than likely, it's the physiological responses that are happening internally today that your intuition has created. And so the average person's like, well, what does that mean? Well, look at your dietary history. Look at all the things that you've tried with and without success. Your intuition told you, listen to this marketer, or, oh, that sounds sexy, or, oh, that sounds like it might work for me, so I'm going to try it. That was your intuition. That was your gut. And your intuition led you to taking actions deployed against that protocol. Your intuition told you to keep going or to abandon ship. Your intuition told you to stop dieting altogether and go back to eating shit. Like whatever it was, that was your intuition. You cannot rely on your intuition if you don't have education. And so this comes back to macro application number 2, right? Number 1 was that anytime you approach the pinnacle of your goals, you should be tracking macros. 100%. Go to war with me on that. I really believe it. Number 2 is I believe that macros are the single best learning tool in existence. If, you and I, we both just said in the last segment that our default go-to is that we undereat. And if we never tracked macros, we would never really have awareness that we're feels adequate. We get caught up in work. We do whatever throughout the day. And at the end of the day, it's like, all right, I ate when I was hungry. I ate when I wanted to eat. I'm going to go to bed. Everything's fine. But like we have the knowledge to look at that and be like, no, like that's definitely undereating. We're trained in nutrition, right? This is something we study. This is something we're passionate about. The average person is not trained in nutrition. How in the hell is their intuition when they're not hungry all day? Because we know, right? Metabolic adaptation says hunger shuts down. How when somebody is living in a metabolically adapted state and their intuition says don't eat, how do they know that they're supposed to eat more? They don't. They haven't gone through NCI. They're not working with a nutrition coach. So if we allow them to follow their own intuition, we are setting them up for failure. We literally are setting them up for failure. So I think that most people, anybody that's undertaking any kind of macro setup or anyone that's undertaking any kind of dietary protocol, I believe every single person should be exposed to some sort of tracking at some point in their dietary endeavor, purely as an educational tool. Dude, I mentioned earlier, like coming out of anorexia, the advice that I got was from a trainer at Gold's Gym, and she said, "Hey, anyone that hasn't heard the story, guys, I was anorexic. I was opening up Gold's Gym from 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. I was the only job I could keep. Like my hormones were so fucked. I couldn't stay awake after 2 p.m. Like I'm not talking, guys, like I need to take a nap. I'm talking if I didn't sit down and fall asleep instantly, like I was gonna like and just pass out anywhere and
That's
like
crazy. I still like that's still crazy to me.
Bro, it was awful. Like I've never, like you never would guess at 18, 19 that that's possible. It was insanity. I've never felt so bad in my life. But in the morning I was golden, right? And so I was opening up Gold's Gym 5 a.m. to 11. It was cool because they had all like the muscle magazines there. So like I literally, it was my dream job. I was like, I get to wake up, I get to be in a fitness setting, I get to read Flex and Muscle and Fitness, and it was like Christmas anytime there was a new magazine delivery. I mean, this was how simple my life was back then. And so I don't even know if magazines still exist today in 2020, but it was crazy, right? And so there was a bodybuilder that would come in every day, and I was like, man, like he was dieting for a show, so he was jacked and he was ripped. And I remember saying to one of the trainers, I was like, God, I really want to look like that. And she was like, oh, well, I do his training and his nutrition. And I was like, oh, like, would you help me? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, you got to go eat 4,000 calories. For whatever reason, that was the arbitrary number she pulled out of her ass. And I was like, okay. Like for whatever reason, dude, I put blind trust into this woman. And I, again, this is 2002. So I went and I bought a calorie counting book at Barnes & Noble and I wrote my own meal plans. But like, had she not given me that, and had I not acted on and bought that calorie counting book, I never would have hit that quantity. Because to me, like, dude, I shit you not, I'll never forget this. It's one of the most embarrassing things I'll ever say publicly, and this is going to live forever because it's on a podcast. I remember bragging about the fact that I had consumed a whole egg. Like, I'm not even kidding. That, like, to me, it was such a big deal because I had only eaten like 2 or 3 egg whites at a time because I'm like, oh, the yolk's going to make me fat. And I remember like, oh, I ate a whole egg. Like I thought I was fucking amazing. Like I thought it was a big deal. So, I certainly wouldn't have gotten to 4,000 calories if I was bragging about a fucking whole egg. Okay. So had I not had to track, had I not had to write that out, I never would have gotten to the appropriate quantity. Now, had I not gotten to the appropriate quantity, I never would have really trusted food and the positive effects it can have. Because as the story goes, 2 or 3 weeks later, I looked in the mirror after consuming 4,000 calories every day, and I looked in the mirror and I was like, holy shit, I'm not fat. And by the way, I had gained like 12 pounds. I had already gained like 12 pounds at that point. And I was like, man, I'm not fat. And I was like, I actually feel a little bit better. It was nuts. Now, I still hadn't correlated the fact that I previously had an eating disorder. I had no idea. Like, I didn't recognize that it was anorexic tendencies. I thought it was very normal. I thought, I did what all eating disordered clients do, which is I carried it as a trophy. And I was like, my discipline is better than your discipline. And like, it was such a horrible time in my life. But had I not gone through that, man, I never would have trusted food. I never would have changed my major. I wouldn't be in this position today. And that simple advice to quantify my nutrition and educate myself relative to quantity absolutely changed everything. And so when we look at the question of today, should people be tracking macros? This is another instance where I'm going to say definitively yes. I really believe every person should learn. Now, dude, in the next room, my mother is the single worst in the world. She will undereat all day intentionally. If I ever got her to track, she would just tell me that like I'm wrong because she's in denial. But there are, I would love for her to track and see what she does. Anybody that that's out there that knows or that's followed us knows, my father's battling health issues. Well, I kind of got on him recently about his carbohydrate intake because we know anybody battling cancer probably shouldn't be on a high carb diet. And he had the balls to say to me at dinner, he said, well, I don't eat a lot of carbs, as he's like eating a piece of bread. And I was like, I beg to differ. But if I could get him to track, right? Yeah. If I could show him, then the numbers don't lie. Emotions lie. Numbers do not lie. And so I think that a lot of time for coaches, if you're trying to have these deep conversations with your clients, getting them to a non-emotional, non-transactional type conversation where it's like, listen, here are the fucking numbers. What does it show you? But now we can't dispute under eating and overeating, and now it becomes the process that NCI teaches, which is just education, application, and make it rain, right? I don't know, dude. What does that say to you?
Yeah, I'm trying to gather my thoughts there, but really, I mean, I think you covered it, honestly.
It's super multifaceted, right? I think that the industry as a whole has done a really bad job of painting the picture of nutrition in one light.
Yeah.
Nutrition has so many diverse applications. We're not always talking about the pursuit of fat loss. And even the pursuit of fat loss, not all pursuits of fat loss are created equal. Are we in the beginning stages? Is this somebody that's reverse dieting, that's just metabolically adapted? Is this somebody that is pinnacle of their goals? Where is this person in the pursuit of fat loss? So
Yeah.
the answer to this question, as with all things nutrition related, is it depends. And nobody wants to hear that. But as a coach, if you're somebody listening to this that's a coach, you need to understand two best friends, because it allows you to do a deeper investigation. It allows you to truly conceptualize the big picture. What's actually happening in the space right now with my client? What's happening in their life? What choices are they making? What choices have they previously made? What do they need to see today in terms of results, tomorrow in terms of results, and what are we working towards long term? All of those answers are not the same, and it
Yeah.
must be understood that the protocols to achieve those answers are also not the same. And so when we start to comprehend that the answer lives inside where are we in the journey? What targets are we trying to achieve? And what is the long-term outcome that we're trying to create? Then the answers begin to reveal themselves. But most people just they don't want to do that deep dive. They want it to be a blanket. Well, should I track macros? Should I not track macros? Unfortunately, the answer is far more complex, but I really hope that the last 25 minutes or so has given people the right things to think about in terms of creating the right application. And, again, in speaking of application, I'm going to reference the fact that, hey, we do have the level 1 coming up this weekend. If you're listening to this live, we do have the live stream coming up October 20th, 25th. Via Zoom. You can sign up. It is half off because it's our last live. If you're listening to this after the 23rd or after this weekend, reach out to us, reference this podcast. I will still give you half off. You can always get yourself signed up for the portal. You got everything on demand. And also, guys, stay tuned because next week we have a really special announcement about the next upcoming level 2. We are doing it live this year. It will be in December. We're also offering a really unique opportunity to not only get your level 2, but to spend 2 days with myself and my team growing your business at completely free. So we are going to be putting out some really cool stuff next week. We're trying to provide lots of opportunity. We recognize right now it's a crazy time in the world. The world needs coaches now more than ever. The world needs your knowledge now more than ever. And to be honest, a lot of us are at home. We got free time, and we've been thinking about going all in on ourselves, going all in on our passions. And now more than ever, you have the opportunity to do so. Take that time, invest in yourself, invest in the outcomes you can create in the world. And the whole game is about. That's what the Army of Impact stands for. And that is why we always live by the code, which is choose impact over everything. So, dude, I think we gave everybody a lot to think about today. I think that there's a lot of people probably got to go back and listen a couple times because there's a lot of nuance to the conversation we had today. But it's an extremely important one because when you can really connect with your clients at a deep level, when you can really understand the journey at a deep level, when you can really start to apply the right tactics at the right time, that's when you become an amazing nutrition coach.
Yeah,
That's
when
when
you
you
can figure
create.
this out, I mean, it helps retention too. Because I mean, I've
Oh,
had
hell yeah.
experiences where at the beginning I was super hell bent on macros because for me, that was what got me out of what I was going through with the whole paleo BS. So I was like, oh, everyone needs to do this, and I quickly realized not everyone wants to track macros right away, and it would lead to these situations where I'd work with a client for like a month and it just wasn't clicking with them, so then
Yep.
they just bounce. And retention was just terrible. And it wasn't until I figured out, oh, there's a progression here. We need to work them up to that. then I was able to actually hold on to clients for much longer than that time frame. So it's also a great retention tool, like we're talking about with nutritional periodization and all of this. And really, just being a great coach is itself a great retention tool, to be honest.
You just nailed it. Being a great coach is the best retention tool. And really the reason
no
we do these topics is to make you a great coach. You know, whether or not you use macros is not going to be the sole determinant of your retention. Whether or not macros is not going to be the sole determinant of your success. You know, when you start looking at all the tools we've talked about thus far, I mean, you know, us relaunching this podcast, it's relatively early, but we've already had some great discussions in terms of fueling CrossFit, in terms of periodization, in terms of not having structure, now bringing to the forefront, understanding when to apply which nutritional tactics at which time. When you have all of these tools in your toolbox, when you know how to use them, when you know when to use them, and when you know how to really go out and connect at a high level, that's when you become a great coach. Great coaches are the ones that get paid a lot of money. Great coaches are the ones that help a lot of people in the world. And great coaches are the ones that really are creating impact at the highest level. So, dude, I appreciate your time yet again. Another early Friday morning, but I'm loving these early times, to be honest. I've been just getting this out. It's been great to be back on the podcast frequently, and I know we have a lot of just amazing things coming. You guys are going to see NCI absolutely everywhere. We've got some cool partnerships that we're getting ready to announce. And I'm gonna drop this. Everyone needs to be prepared to live limitless. So I'm gonna leave that there.
I don't even know what that means, to be honest.
You don't even know what that means yet. Nobody knows. I don't even know if the team knows, but I promise you, everyone will be prepared to live limitless. We're going to be sharing that opportunity here really shortly, which I'm really excited as well. So be sure to stay tuned to all things NCI. Guys, most importantly, it's Friday. I don't know when you're listening to this, but it's Friday here. Don't forget, just maximize yourself. And the more you maximize and invest in yourself, the better you become to lead. The more you lead, the more you truly can choose impact over everything. Have an amazing week, guys.